The ancient roots and early development of the Sumerian world. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers lies an expanse often referred to as the cradle of civilization. An area of land so fertile that it paved the way for the emergence of organized societies in a manner unseen anywhere else. Ancient Egypt frequently captures the imagination when people consider early human development with its colossal pyramids and pharaohs' legacies. Yet a deeper look into historical records and archaeological findings shows that the Sumerians in Mesopotamia established an equally extraordinary blueprint for future civilizations. Centuries prior to the rise of well-known empires, the Sumerians quietly evolved into sophisticated city-states, forging foundations of technology, social organization, and religious thought that would ripple through millennia. While mainstream references to ancient Sumer often condense their achievements into short mentions of cuneiform writing and ziggurats, the culture itself was vast and layered. Early Sumerians were not merely pastoralists or subsistence farmers. They were thinkers, planners, builders, and guardians of intricate belief systems. Their achievements in governance, legal codes, and spiritual practices set precedents emulated by a host of later societies, including Babylon and Assyria. Part of the fascination with Sumer lies in how this civilization balanced the harsh realities of the Mesopotamian environment with remarkable innovation. Seasonal flooding droughts and an array of hostile neighbors might have spelled doom for a less determined people, yet the Sumerians managed to transform challenges into catalysts for ingenuity. The landscape was demanding, temperatures soared, and rainfall was unpredictable. So harnessing the rivers became essential. They developed robust irrigation networks to channel water into agricultural fields, sustaining crops needed for both survival and trade. Additionally, they engineered city walls and other fortifications, blending structural durability with an eye for aesthetic expression. For example, some city walls were built using kiln-fired brick which survived centuries of natural wear. While the imposing structures served as defenses, they also became a testament to Sumerian craftsmanship, hinting at a society that valued beauty in tandem with practicality. The pace of Sumerian progress is another intriguing aspect that draws historians into debates about its origins. With minimal precedents to guide them, they managed to conceive a writing system, cuneiform, that recorded everything from tax tallies to hymns for the gods. This script became a cornerstone of their administrative and religious life, ensuring that knowledge, decrees, and poetry would not fade into oblivion. But the advancement went further. Sumerians formalized social stratifications and governance structures, introducing city-state models featuring assemblies of elders, royal leadership, and specialized officials for taxation, agriculture, and commerce. Though certain details remain shrouded in the mists of time, what emerges clearly is that Sumer's society was organized, and it recognized the critical importance of planning, record-keeping, and communal effort. Their multi-tiered system of governance often placed a king-like figure referred to by various titles in different times at the top, guiding military endeavors and statewide decisions, while councils and scribes provided support. Given these cultural and technological feats, it is no wonder that Sumer's narrative sparks so many discussions among archaeologists and historians. In an age with limited transport capabilities and no modern machinery, how did this society progress to such heights within a relatively short period? Some argue that Mesopotamia's unique environment, fertile soils and accessible waterways gave them a head start on agriculture, which in turn freed people to specialize in crafts, trade administration, and religious roles. Others point to robust intercity trade networks, stretching to the Mediterranean, the Zagros Mountains, and perhaps even the Indus Valley, allowing them to absorb a variety of ideas, goods, and experiences. It is through these mechanisms that the Sumerians, a people often overshadowed by more monumental civilizations in mainstream history, came to be recognized as one of humanity's earliest and most influential cultures. At the heart of Sumerian culture was a potent religious system that influenced every facet of daily life, reflecting the Sumerians' deepest anxieties and hopes in a world prone to natural disasters. Rather than imagining nature governed by straightforward physical laws, the Sumerians saw cosmic forces as animated by gods whose temperament could deliver blessings or catastrophes. Whether it was abundant rainfall or a withering drought, they believed it stemmed from the divine realm. This deeply polytheistic worldview led the Sumerians to construct towering temple complexes called ziggurats, which soared above cityscapes in a striking display of religious fervor and architectural ingenuity. Each ziggurat was dedicated to a specific deity, Lil Inanna Utu, or others representing aspects of wind love or the sun, and their worship shaped the city's identity and communal direction. Inside these monumental structures, priests conducted daily rituals meant to appease the gods and secure cosmic harmony. Strict guidelines governed temple operations, from the garments priests wore to the precise wording of incantations and prayers. Errors in ritual practice risked incurring the gods' wrath, potentially bringing calamities upon the city-state. Offerings took diverse forms: grains, wines, livestock, and in extremely dire times, human sacrifices. These latter events, while not a cornerstone of Sumerian custom, indicate just how deeply Sumerians internalized their belief in the gods' direct involvement in human affairs. The open courtyards of ziggurats often served as public gathering spaces during festivals, further intertwining religious duty with social cohesion. During major religious events, entire populations would gather to celebrate or mourn, forging strong communal bonds through shared worship. The Grand Akitu festival, which marked the new year, was especially significant. In these lavish ceremonies, rulers often performed symbolic acts intended to renew and stabilize universal order, implying that gods and mortals were inextricably linked in a cyclical dance of creation and destruction. Crucially, a hallmark of Sumerian religion was the acknowledgement that every force in nature was under a deity's dominion. They recognized that the pantheon itself mirrored the complexities of human society. The gods formed alliances, engaged in conflicts, and endured emotional extremes akin to mortal experiences. This resemblance made the divine realm relatable, motivating people to approach the gods not as distant abstractions, but as potent neighbors who could be reasoned with or pleaded to for life's necessities. Stories of divine quarrels and alliances, such as tales involving Anu Enlil and Enki, offered a symbolic reflection of how city-states coexisted, frequently forging political ties or engaging in conflicts. The pantheon's dynamic interactions mirrored Sumer's political environment, fractious yet interconnected. Even though it has been thousands of years since these rituals and beliefs shaped daily existence along the Tigris and Euphrates, the echoes of Sumerian religion persist. Later civilizations, from Babylon to Assyria, inherited and adapted the Sumerian pantheon and mythologies, melding them with their own cultural lenses. Portions of these mythic structures made their way into the Hebrew Bible and broader Near Eastern traditions, illustrating how deeply embedded Sumer's religious concepts became in the collective consciousness. The Sumerians' focus on cosmic balance, the cyclical nature of existence, and the undeniable link between godly favor and societal prosperity resonated far beyond their own borders. Though many details have faded with time, the spiritual blueprint Sumer provided remains visible in the region's subsequent religious and mythological evolution. In essence, Sumerian polytheism was not a mere superstition, but a cohesive framework that captured the precariousness of life in ancient Mesopotamia, affirming that through ritual devotion and communal commitment, people could find order in an unpredictable world. Innovation in resource management stands as a defining characteristic of Sumer. The Sumerians recognized early that controlling the waters of the Tigris and Euphrates was essential not just for survival, but for building a prosperous society. By organizing large-scale irrigation networks, they transformed vast stretches of dry, sun-scorched land into productive farmland. Dikes, canals, and sluices became integral to city planning, ensuring that farmland remained fertile and supportive of a growing population. Mastery of water management also propelled the rise of specialized labor classes individuals who took charge of maintaining canal infrastructure, scribes who tracked resource distribution, and craftsmen who contributed expertise in masonry, pottery, or carpentry. Moreover, robust agriculture paved the way for trade surpluses. Grain, wool, and dates became commodities that could be traded across regions, catalyzing interactions with neighboring cultures. As trade expanded, so too did the Sumerians' exposure to different technologies, materials, and ideas. Nowhere is their inventive spirit more apparent than in metallurgy. Ancient Sumerians began with the softer metals readily available near rivers, particularly gold, known for its malleability and beauty, but useless for sturdy tools or weapons. When the need for more formidable implements grew both for warfare and for everyday tasks, Sumerians eventually discovered copper. Mining copper was an arduous venture. The ore was hidden in mountainous regions like the Zagros Range, requiring lengthy and risky expeditions. Once secured, smelters in Sumer heated the ore to staggering temperatures in clay furnaces fueled by charcoal, unveiling, for the first time, the secrets of extracting pure metal. This labor-intensive process underscored the significance of early scientific observation. Noticing how certain impurities affected the metal's strength led them to experiment with additives, culminating in the creation of bronze via the fusion of copper and tin. The exact ratio of metals, often 9 parts copper to 1 part tin, indicated deliberate trial and error and the beginnings of scientific process. The result was a robust alloy that could maintain sharp edges and endure prolonged use, revolutionizing tools for farming, building, and combat. The city-states competed to showcase advanced craftsmanship in everything from construction to weaponry. Skilled workers not only produced more efficient tools, but also created splendid artifacts that had spiritual or aesthetic significance. Ornate jewelry, figurines, ceremonial helmets, and intricate vessels often combined precious stones like lapis lazuli with gold or silver filigree. Elaborate designs on vessels or cylinder seals revealed narratives from mythology, recorded genealogies, or exalted the might of local deities. Cylinder seals, in particular, were a distinct hallmark of Sumerian art and governance. These small, intricately carved objects were used to imprint ownership or authenticity on clay tablets and goods functioning like a personal or official signature. The repeated presence of a handbag motif carved onto some seals and reliefs has intrigued scholars for decades. Some propose it was a container of sacred items, while others argue it held seeds symbolizing life. However interpreted, the repeated image signifies a shared cultural or religious reference, with enough weight to transcend time and local boundaries. Such progression in crafts and metallurgy was not accidental. It hinged upon the synergy between agriculture, resource management, religion, and governance. Temples funded large construction projects, while the emergence of scribal schools, often near temples, ensured knowledge of metallurgy, mathematics, and administration was recorded and passed down. Society recognized that better tools reinforced city defenses, facilitated land cultivation, and amplified commercial exchanges. These efforts supported a feedback loop. Prosperity fueled development, while technological leaps spurred further prosperity. Despite occasional setbacks from environmental disasters and inter-city rivalries, the Sumerians' capacity for adaptation and collaboration enabled them to craft a civilization that became a gold standard for advanced Bronze Age societies. The Sumerian political landscape centered on city-states' distinct urban centers that governed surrounding lands through their own administrative systems, laws, and deities. Each city-state, such as Uruk, Ur-Kish, Lagash, or Nippur, prided itself on its patron god, constructing temple complexes that served as religious and administrative hubs. The presence of ziggurats was not a mere architectural marvel, but also a symbolic declaration of the city's might and piety. At the helm of these city-states stood rulers who were more than just political figures. They often claimed divine endorsement, collaborating closely with the priestly class to maintain social harmony. Historians have described the early Sumerian governance model as theocratic, with temple officials exerting immense influence over daily life, from tax collection to legal adjudication. Over centuries, the city-states evolved their systems to handle increasingly complex administrative tasks. Bureaucratic networks sprang up involving scribe teams who meticulously recorded commercial transactions, land ownership tax obligations, and religious offerings. Stacks of clay tablets discovered in archaeological digs detail everything from livestock counts to the movement of goods to neighboring regions. This organized record-keeping was essential to the city-state's survival, enabling leaders to allocate resources, effectively oversee trade, and plan military activities. Furthermore, the scribes who kept these records formed an educated layer in Sumerian society, bridging the gap between the ruling class and the general populace. Their presence allowed central authorities to tap into specialized knowledge, ensuring that no matter who occupied leadership roles, vital know-how remained in circulation. Still, competition was fierce. With growing populations and limited farmland, city-states often clashed over water rights, trade routes, and farmland boundaries. Urban fortifications, massive walls, moats, and watchtowers became crucial for fending off both rival city-states and outside invaders like the Elamites. Military campaigns were organized in a systematic manner, with leaders conscripting laborers and farmers into armies during conflict. Some city-states such as Lagash under King Eannatum distinguished themselves by temporarily subjugating neighboring regions, unifying parts of Sumer under a single rule. Yet these conquests often proved short-lived as city-states yearned for independence and quickly rebelled. Despite the constant rivalry, certain religious traditions, particularly pilgrimages to Nippur, the spiritual heart of Sumer, served as unifying threads fostering a sense of shared identity. Over time, the Sumerian concept of kingship grew more pronounced, shifting from the early reliance on councils of elders and high priests to a monarchical system where the king claimed near-divine status. For instance, the king list, a record inscribed on clay tablets, chronicles a mix of mythical and semi-historical monarchs, attributing some with extraordinary lifespans of thousands of years. The narrative implies that kingship first descended from heaven, reinforcing the view that political power was sacred and separate from mere mortal activity. However, the king list also reveals that the seat of power frequently rotated among city-states. When one city-state waned due to environmental strain, social unrest, or defeat in war, another rose to prominence, taking on the king's mantle. This cyclical pattern underscores the fluid nature of Sumer's political climate and the inherent fragility underlying even the most formidable dynasties. Interestingly, as city-states oscillated between dominance and decline, they also spurred each other on toward heightened cultural and technological accomplishments. Competition encouraged grander building projects, stronger armies, and more refined administrative systems. The repeated expansion and contraction of city-state power had consequences for local populations as well, fueling migrations, reshaping alliances, and demanding continuous adaptation. But despite the tumultuous political environment, Sumer endured as a civilization for more than 3 millennia, leaving a collective imprint that reverberated through later Mesopotamian empires. This endurance was not merely a reflection of militaristic might. It was also anchored in shared religious convictions, advanced resource management literacy, and the establishment of robust legal and educational frameworks that persisted long after the city-states lost their independence. Arguably one of the Sumerians' greatest legacies is their pioneering invention of a written language cuneiform. Before cuneiform emerged, societies worldwide relied on oral traditions using symbols or rudimentary tokens to keep track of resources. But in the bustling centers of Sumer commerce, religious obligations and governance soon outgrew basic mnemonic tools. Starting around 3500 BCE, scribes experimenting with clay tablets and styluses crafted from reed began formulating wedge-shaped impressions representing sounds, objects, or ideas. Over centuries, these simple pictograms evolved into a sophisticated script with hundreds of symbols capable of expressing abstract concepts. The invention of writing was monumental, propelling Sumer from a primarily spoken culture into a literate one able to preserve knowledge and transmit it across generations with remarkable precision. Yet mastering cuneiform demanded extensive training. Within the walls of educational institutions known as edubas, or tablet houses, students spent years memorizing and reproducing signs under the strict tutelage of expert scribes. These teachers were revered figures in Sumerian society, often identified by familial or paternal titles like father. They instilled discipline and intellectual rigor in students who were expected to follow instructions to the letter. Alongside learning to form wedge-shaped marks on clay, future scribes delved into mathematics, theology, law, and literature. This robust curriculum aligned with the multifaceted roles scribes would assume as administrators, accountants, archivists, or even temple officials. Their specialized training and literacy granted them a respected position in the social hierarchy, bridging the spheres of governance, commerce, and religion. The immediate utility of cuneiform was administrative. Temple and palace economies required detailed documentation, land surveys, receipts for goods, standardizations of weights and measures, legal pronouncements, and property transfers. Cuneiform tablets meticulously recorded everything from how many sacks of barley were allocated to each labor group to how many copper tools a temple workshop needed. Standard formats emerged, making these tablets relatively uniform in structure. But beyond administrative texts, cuneiform also breathed life into Sumerian mythology, poetry, and reflection. Hymns to gods like Enlil and Inanna were etched onto clay, becoming some of the earliest examples of written religious literature. Epic tales such as the stories of Gilgamesh showcased not only the Sumerian flair for narrative, but also their philosophical explorations of heroism, mortality, and the relationship between humans and the divine. This written tradition helped unify a territory of disparate city-states. While each city had local dialects and distinct religious customs, the consistent script offered a common language of official communication. Over time, cuneiform's influence radiated beyond Sumer's borders, adopted by Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, who adapted it to their own tongues. The range of topics, economic, legal, literary, and scientific, expanded dramatically. Astonishingly, some texts delve into advanced mathematics, including solutions for quadratic and cubic equations, revealing the Sumerians' unexpected sophistication. Thanks to cuneiform, historians have direct insight into Sumerian daily life, including disputes over fields, marriage contracts, trade agreements, and prescriptions for illnesses. Perhaps most significantly, cuneiform facilitated the birth of recorded history. Instead of relying on oral accounts at risk of distortion or oblivion, events and traditions now had a tangible, enduring form. This system anchored the memory of an entire people, setting the stage for subsequent civilizations to develop their own archival methods, ultimately shaping how humanity as a global civilization learns about its collective past. The status and roles of women in ancient societies often elude modern observers owing to the scarcity of records. Yet Sumer provides glimpses that can reshape preconceived notions of women's contributions in antiquity. While it is accurate that men usually held high-ranking positions such as kings, generals, or supreme priests, Sumerian women exercised more rights than their counterparts in many other Bronze Age cultures. In Sumer, women could own property, enter contractual agreements, and even manage businesses. This level of autonomy was codified to a degree in legal frameworks like the Code of Arnamu, which recognized women's rights in marriage, inheritance, and divorce, though these rights varied according to social class and city-state policies. Temple life, in particular, afforded women unique avenues for influence. Some women dedicated themselves to service as priestesses, acquiring literacy and numerical skills critical for overseeing temple estates, distributing rations, or keeping track of offerings. The figure of Enheduanna stands out prominently, a high priestess of the moon, god Nanna, and daughter of King Sargon of Akkad. She has been recognized as the world's earliest known named author, leaving behind a collection of hymns and poems dedicated to the goddess Inanna. Her writings transcend mere liturgical function. They offer emotional depth and glimpses into how a woman of high standing perceived the divine and her place in society. Subsequent generations revered Enheduanna's work not just as religious text, but also as an exemplar of poetic craft, underscoring the cultural importance of her contributions. Nonetheless, perhaps the most striking testament to the prominence women could attain in Sumer is the story of Queen Kubaba. She was not born into a royal lineage. Legend suggests she rose from modest origins, possibly working as an innkeeper. Her intelligence and leadership qualities propelled her to the throne in Kish around 2500 BCE, an event chronicled in the Sumerian king list. This text, which often mingled myth and history, credits Kubaba with founding a dynasty that lasted about a century. Her reign serves as a precedent for the possibility that personal ability in Sumer could, under certain conditions, outweigh birthright, allowing a woman to claim supreme authority. Kubaba's achievements highlight the adaptability and diverse potential within Sumer's social fabric, signaling that while patriarchal norms dominated, exceptions to those norms existed and were celebrated. Despite these extraordinary cases, it remains crucial to acknowledge that lower-class women in Sumer had a very different experience. They often labored in fields, workshops, or households, with their voices largely absent from the clay tablets that primarily reflect elite or temple-based documentation. Cases of exploitation or the limited scope of domestic roles likely abounded, and the presence of slaves, both male and female, indicates social stratifications were pronounced. Even so, the fact that any women at all ascended to positions of significant power or left behind written works is exceptional in the broader context of early civilizations. That Sumer provided such spaces for women within religious, economic, and occasionally political spheres underscores its relative openness. Their approach to gender roles diverged markedly from many contemporary cultures, exemplifying how Sumer was a complex society that could simultaneously uphold rigid hierarchies and permit groundbreaking possibilities for those who possessed or pursued the opportunity for influence. No account of Sumerian civilization would be complete without examining the extraordinary pantheon of gods and the captivating myths they inspired. Central to Sumerian belief were the Anunnaki, a collective of deities often referred to as those who came from heaven. They were portrayed not only as the original architects of human destiny, but also as a complex family, each god presiding over critical dimensions of existence. Legendary tales like the creation of humanity highlight the figure of Enki, god of water wisdom and creative spark, who alongside the mother goddess Ninhursag reportedly fashioned humans out of clay and the blood of a sacrificed god. This narrative resonates in numerous cultures, echoing the notion that humans were molded from divine or sacred materials. The Sumerians believed that once humanity was established, it bore the burden of laboring and worshipping to relieve the gods of mundane tasks. However, as humans advanced and exhibited free will, they earned the gods' wrath. Cataclysmic events like the Great Flood were interpreted as divine interventions intended to punish humanity's hubris while also renewing creation. The recurring motif of cosmic and existential battles further enriches these mythologies. Gods tangled with terrifying entities or confronted each other in struggles for dominion. Deities like Ninurta became heroic figures through epic tales of slaying monsters, metaphorical embodiments of chaos, restoring balance and safeguarding civilization. Inanna, representing both love and warfare, mirrored the dual nature of existence. She could bestow beauty and fertility, or unleash furious destruction. Such divine complexities often paralleled the unpredictability of Sumerian life in a landscape prone to both agricultural bounty and catastrophic flooding. Mythic cycles thus served as both allegory and explanation, aiming to structure the chaos of nature, human behavior, and fate. Modern interpretations of these myths vary widely. Some see them purely as symbolic narratives capturing Sumer's struggles with the environment, social tension, and internal conflicts among ruling classes. Others, particularly fringe theorists, argue for an extraterrestrial interpretation, contending that the Anunnaki were ancient astronauts whose advanced knowledge kick-started human progress. While mainstream scholarship does not support these alien origin theories, the fact that they persist underscores the enduring magnetism of Sumerian tales and the profound sense of mystery that still surrounds this lost world. The cyclical structure of Sumer's mythic storytelling creation, disobedience, divine wrath, renewal, would heavily influence later religious literature, from the Akkadian epics to biblical accounts of floods and moral tests. By examining these narratives, we see how the line between religion, storytelling, and societal rules blurred. Myths confirmed divine authority over the mortal realm and served as cautionary tales about transgressing cosmic hierarchies. They depicted the gods as deeply involved in human affairs, but not without room for divine compassion or alliances, as Enki's secretive help during the flood crisis shows. This synergy of law and theology cemented spiritual unity among disparate city-states, even when they contested each other's influence. The result is a tapestry of beliefs that continues to fascinate historians, theologians, and laypeople alike. Thousands of years later, the Sumerian pantheon remains a potent reminder of how mythic frameworks can shape a civilization's identity and provide psychological scaffolding for its values and aspirations. Indeed, these timeless stories prompt us to reflect on our modern search for answers in a universe that can still feel as mercurial and daunting as it did to the earliest Sumerian scribes. Innovations, traditions, and expanding horizons. Sumerians perceived mortality not as the cessation of life, but as a transformative stage closely linked to their cosmological views. This belief underpinned the opulent and sometimes harrowing burial rituals that have long captivated modern archaeologists. Excavations at the Royal Cemetery of Ur, led by Leonard Woolley in the early 20th century, unveiled a grand testament to how Sumerians treated their elite dead tombs. Filled with exquisite treasures, golden headdresses, lapis lazuli embedded ornaments, intricate silver vessels, lyres adorned with precious metals, and disturbingly the remains of loyal retainers who died alongside their rulers. The tomb of Queen Puabi, for example, contained her bejeweled remains amid 25 attendants arranged as if to serve her even beyond the veil. Some wore lavish outfits and carried musical instruments, presumably to entertain or honor their queen in the afterlife. Although earlier interpretations posited that retainers might have taken poison voluntarily as a gesture of loyalty, modern forensic studies suggest more brutal ends, lethal trauma, possibly inflicted, to ensure they would join and serve their monarch in eternity. Such practices point to a social stratification that allowed, even required, the sacrificing of lives to confirm the cosmic and societal order. Royal funerals could extend over days of public ceremony involving music, mourning rites, and offerings. These rituals were more than mere spectacle. They symbolized the transfer of power, the continuity of divine right, and the unwavering hierarchy that placed rulers in quasi-divine status. By demonstrating the king or queen's ability to command a following into death itself, the monarchy underlined its ultimate authority. Yet historians continue to debate whether these attendants went willingly coerced by the promise of exalted afterlife service, or whether they were forcibly sacrificed as part of deeply entrenched belief. Whatever the motivation, the scale and precision of these burials speak volumes about the logistic prowess of the city-state, highlighting the mobilization of artisans, laborers, and priests under a shared religious worldview. Over time, Sumerian customs did change. Evidence indicates that large-scale human sacrifice gradually lessened, possibly due to shifts in religious sentiment or the exorbitant costs these ceremonies imposed on state resources. As contact with other cultures grew, influences from neighboring Akkadians, Babylonians, and eventually external powers like the Elamites introduced new perspectives on mortality and rulership. Yet the fundamental idea that the afterlife mirrored earthly existence in structure and hierarchy endured, so that families still buried everyday goods with their deceased, believing that tools, amulets, or beloved personal items might be needed in the underworld. Even outside the upper echelons of society, simpler graves sometimes contained pottery, small personal items, or tokens that indicated a hope for protection or comfort in the realm of the dead. To the Sumerians, death did not sever ties between the individual and the living community. Rather, it opened a door to another plane of existence governed by gods like Ereshkigal, who oversaw the underworld. These beliefs and rituals served to bind people together in shared reverence for ancestors, reinforcing social bonds and moral obligations to the city-state and its divine guardians. The opulent relics unearthed in Sumer's royal tombs also provide modern scholars with tangible evidence of the civilization's extensive trade. Lapis lazuli traced back to Afghanistan gold that might have been sourced from distant mines and shells, originating from the Persian Gulf or beyond, underscore the vast networks connecting Mesopotamia with regions as far-reaching as the Indus Valley. Each artifact is a silent witness to the dynamic trade corridors, cultural exchanges, and accumulated wealth that sustained Sumer's advanced society. Thus, these burial sites are more than mere resting places. They are portals into the complex spiritual, social, and economic systems of an era that set foundational precedents for civilizations to come. Given Mesopotamia's relative scarcity of natural resources, especially timber, precious metals, and certain minerals, trade was essential to the Sumerian survival strategy. It formed a remarkable foundation of mutual dependence that linked Sumer's city-states to regions near and far. Critical shipments of cedar wood came from the forests of Lebanon. Tin traversed from eastern Anatolia, and prized lapis lazuli made its way from distant Afghanistan journeys that required caravans laden with provisions crossing deserts or navigating perilous mountain passes. Seminal outposts like Dilmun, possibly located in present-day Bahrain and Magan, associated with areas in Oman or the United Arab Emirates, blossomed into trade nodes where Sumerian merchants exchanged textiles, grain, and crafted goods for copper hardwood and exotic minerals. Over the centuries, these networks expanded to connect with the Indus Valley civilization, revealing a vibrant chain of maritime and overland routes capable of spanning thousands of kilometers. Archaeological findings, including Sumerian-style seals discovered far from Mesopotamia, corroborate the existence of elaborate commerce webs. These seals often bore inscriptions that recorded cargo types, ownership, or contractual agreements, reflecting the regulatory and bureaucratic sophistication that accompanied Sumer's trade. Merchants were not lone wanderers, but operated under temple or palace auspices, ensuring that religious and political authorities had a stake in commercial ventures. Some caravans even served diplomatic functions, carrying messages, gifts, or emissaries seeking alliances. The synergy between religion and trade manifested whenever caravans departed under divine blessings, reflecting Sumerian leaders' desire to appease gods who controlled success and fortune. Such expansions in commerce accelerated cultural diffusion, introducing foreign customs, technologies, and beliefs into Mesopotamia. In return, Sumer's achievements in writing, construction, and governance found new audiences abroad. However, trade expansion was no smooth endeavor. Environmental challenges, shifting river courses, desert storms, high seas, constantly threatened progress. Political tensions added to the complexity. The rise of new powers in the region could block key routes or impose taxes on merchants. City-states themselves competed for control of these lucrative corridors, sometimes leading to armed skirmishes near trade junctions or resources. Military protection of caravans became a prerogative, resulting in carefully negotiated treaties or alliances that aimed to shield trade paths from banditry or rival city-state interference. Navigating these tensions demanded diplomatic acumen and a well-coordinated administrative approach. Soldiers might accompany caravans, ensuring their safe passage in territories marked by warring neighbors. Scribes meticulously documented contracts, stelae commemorated pacts, and priestly blessings sought divine favor for risky journeys. Through meticulous planning and the occasional show of military might, Sumer managed to keep trade lines generally open, fueling city-state prosperity. The impetus behind this vast exchange network lay in the synergy between Sumer's thriving agriculture and its advanced crafts. With robust harvests thanks to sophisticated irrigation, Sumer could produce a surplus of grains and other goods which became valuable export items. Those exports were then traded for raw materials not found in the region. This interdependence strengthened both internal unity, since farmers, traders, and craftsmen recognized their roles were mutually beneficial, and external relations as foreign cultures valued Sumer's produce and craftsmanship. Over time, these encounters shaped Sumer's identity, weaving it into the tapestry of a broader, ancient Near Eastern world. Information gleaned from travelers, traders, and ambassadors introduced new art styles, metallurgical methods, and religious nuances, influencing Sumer's own development in a continuous flow of mutual inspiration. Ultimately, trade was not simply about goods changing hands. It was a driving force that sparked cultural and technological progression, reinforcing Sumer's position as a pivotal crossroads where minds, goods, and innovations converged in humanity's early quest for collective advancement. Among Sumer's monumental achievements, the construction of ziggurats stands as an enduring testament to both the civilization's architectural sophistication and its religious dedication. While ziggurats are sometimes compared to Egyptian pyramids, there is a stark contrast in both style and purpose. A ziggurat took the form of a terraced step pyramid composed of multiple levels, each smaller than the one below, culminating in a temple at the summit, reserved for the patron deity, of the city-state. The great ziggurat of Ur exemplifies such engineering marvels. Begun by King Ur-Nammu and completed by his son Shulgi, this layered edifice has a core of mud brick fortified with kiln-fired bricks on its exterior, ensuring a resilient structure capable of enduring punishing heat and the test of time. Although much of its upper levels have eroded, the base remains evoking awe among modern-day visitors and scholars alike. These towering constructs served multiple intertwined roles. Primarily, they were spiritual nexuses. In Sumer's cosmology, the gods presided over daily life from a lofty vantage point, and the upper temple provided an immediate link to the divine realm reachable only by specially sanctioned priests or royalty. Ceremonies within these sanctified chambers were believed to bolster the bond between deities and mortals, guaranteeing auspicious harvests, city protection, and communal well-being. During festivals, the ziggurat courtyards became venues for rituals, processions, and communal celebrations, unifying citizens under a shared faith. The structure itself dominating the skyline also served as a powerful emblem of a city's prestige and the unwavering devotion of its leaders. The more imposing the ziggurat, the greater the perceived favor of its deity. However, ziggurats were not mere religious sites. They functioned as administrative hearts with surrounding complexes that included storerooms for agricultural surplus, scribal schools, edubas, and administrative offices, overseeing everything from trade records to legal disputes. Priests played vital bureaucratic roles, dispensing rations to laborers, archiving legal codices, and orchestrating the distribution of farmland. This concentration of administrative tasks near or within a religious space reinforced the notion that the divine had sanctioned all civil and economic affairs. Moreover, the height of the ziggurat had practical implications for observing astronomical phenomena. Scholars studying ancient texts propose that Sumerian priests may have tracked celestial bodies from the upper reaches, forging a rudimentary astronomy that influenced their calendar and ritual calendar. This synergy of religion governance and early scientific inquiry underscores how flexible these structures were: public gathering places, repositories for knowledge, sacred sanctuaries, and vantage points for cosmic observation. Ziggurats also functioned as a form of propaganda. Commanding a populace to build such massive edifices displayed a ruler's organizational talent and resources. Citizens conscripted or otherwise might labor for extended periods under the watchful eyes of overseers, forging a collective identity in the process. The significance of raising a ziggurat was twofold. On one hand, it appeased and honored the gods, ensuring communal security. On the other, it showcased a city's glory, wealth, and pious fervor to rival states. The synergy between faith and administrative might turn ziggurats into pillars of Sumerian life, both figuratively and literally. Modern archaeology, gleaning data from cuneiform tablets and structural remains, continues to piece together how these towering feats were constructed. Clay brick manufacturing, transport logistics, and the architectural techniques required to support massive weight across multiple terraces speak to the Sumerians' robust understanding of engineering principles. Each discovery adds another dimension to our comprehension of how intimately tied spiritual devotions were with the day-to-day governance that sustained Sumer's city-states for centuries. Sumerian contributions to mathematics and science are integral to their legacy as an early knowledge civilization. They are credited with creating the base 60 system that resonates in how modern societies measure time: 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute, and circles 360 degrees. Although often taken for granted, this numerical framework governed daily life in Sumer and continues to influence global practices. Astronomy provided a complementary dimension to their numeric skill set. While direct evidence of sophisticated astronomical tools remains scarce, references in cuneiform texts suggest that Sumerians meticulously observed celestial bodies. They recorded the positions of stars, tracked lunar cycles, and aligned major festivals or agricultural schedules with predictable cosmic events. Evidence that underscores an embryonic understanding of how the heavens interacted with terrestrial existence. They believed deities governed celestial spheres, so deciphering these movements held both spiritual and practical weight, guiding planting seasons, temple rituals, and even political decisions. In parallel, medicine took shape in a sphere that balanced empirical observation with spiritual intervention. Healers known as Ashu practiced rudimentary pharmacology, using regional plants, minerals, and occasionally imported substances. Texts reveal prescriptions involving honey for wound dressings, garlic for infections, and willow bark, now recognized to contain salicylic acid for pain relief. The process was more systematic than might be expected. Clay tablets list dosages, preparation instructions, and symptoms for which certain treatments were recommended. While disease was often conceptualized as a punishment from offended deities or the work of malevolent spirits, there was a clear place for reasoned treatment and the craft of healing. Ritual and incantations sometimes accompanied practical cures. Priests or a spiritual practitioner called a shipir might recite special prayers to bolster a remedy's potency. Moreover, early forms of surgical intervention are attested. Wound care, bone setting, and even rudimentary attempts at draining abscesses show the Sumerians possessed essential anatomical knowledge, albeit interwoven with spiritual doctrines. The library of King Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, though a later Assyrian repository, preserved texts that likely stemmed from older Sumerian and Babylonian sources. These clay tablets serve as a testament to the continuity of Mesopotamian medical and scientific scholarship. Since literacy was concentrated among scribes and temple officials, such knowledge, whether about stars' numbers or the healing arts, remained an elite monopoly in many respects. But it indirectly benefited the broader population through better planning, agricultural cycles, and health interventions. Over time, these Sumerian seeds of learning would pass to Babylonians, Assyrians, and eventually influence Greek thought, bridging ancient Mesopotamia to the foundation of Western science. The quest to measure, map, and understand reality represented Sumer's response to environmental challenges and the unpredictability of human life. Floods were frequent. Diseases could ravage entire regions. Sumerians recognized that both systematic data gathering and ritual intercession were needed to maintain equilibrium. This approach reflects a society that, though steeped in myth, was not blind to empirical cause and effect. Balancing the two, rational observation and spiritual devotion, proved to be a hallmark of Sumerian culture. Even thousands of years later, these combined legacies illuminate how an early civilization harnessed curiosity and belief to establish the building blocks of mathematics, astronomy, and medicine. As Sumer's city-states expanded, governance needed clear legal frameworks to address property rights, trade disputes, criminal offenses, and social responsibilities. The famous Code of Ur-Nammu, dating to around 2100 BCE, exemplifies one of the earliest surviving legal texts. Although overshadowed by the more widely known Code of Hammurabi from Babylon, a few centuries later, Ur-Nammu's laws delineate punishments for crimes like murder, adultery, or theft, alongside rules for commercial transactions and personal conduct. Significantly, these laws carry a structured approach to justice that includes fines, compensation, and at times corporal punishment, distinguishing them from purely retaliatory or retributive measures. Scholars marvel at their relatively advanced perspective on justice, highlighting that they aimed not simply to terrorize offenders, but to create societal balance by compensating victims and discouraging repeat violations. Religion undergirded much of this legal apparatus. The preamble of the Code of Ur-Nammu often invokes the gods An and Enlil, claiming the king was divinely commissioned to uphold justice and order. By rooting their laws in divine authority, the Sumerians legitimized statutes in a society where the gods' favor dictated survival. Yet practical administrative sense also shaped these rules. They standardized commerce, ensured fair wages, safeguarded property rights, and even offered legal channels for divorce, reflecting Sumer's nuanced understanding of social structures. Crucially, these codes acknowledged the stratified nature of Sumerian society, allocating different punishments according to a person's social class, nobility, free commoners, or slaves. While modern sensibilities might judge this as unequal in the context of its era, the codified approach provided a level of transparency and predictability in resolving disputes. Public disclosure of these laws was pivotal. Though literacy remained a specialized skill, the laws were inscribed on stelae or clay tablets placed in public spaces, symbolizing that justice was not arbitrary. Priests and judges could read the laws out loud when needed, ensuring even the illiterate masses were not entirely ignorant of their contents. This openness reduced the potential for corruption by officials or local elites. Judiciaries, typically drawn from respected figures in the community or temple, presided over cases in designated court areas near the ziggurat, resolving conflicts, examining evidence, and issuing verdicts based on codified regulations. In serious matters, the king or high priest could intervene, reinforcing the top-down hierarchical structure while retaining a semblance of procedural consistency. The influence of the Code of Ur-Nammu did not end with Sumer. Subsequent legal traditions in Mesopotamia, including the codes of Eshnunna and Hammurabi, borrowed heavily from Sumerian precedents, refining laws and occasionally toughening penalties. Over centuries, these legal traditions merged with Semitic cultural elements, ultimately informing Hebrew law and even influencing Greek and Roman legal thought through secondary channels. Examining this legacy reveals that Sumer's legal innovations were not narrow or ephemeral. Instead, they reflected a systematic approach to governance that recognized how critical a clear, accessible rule of law was for societal stability and economic prosperity. This balance between harsh injunctions and structured remedies speaks to Sumer's larger ethos, a culture striving to maintain cosmic and civil harmony, guided by both pragmatic needs and reverence for a pantheon that was believed to oversee the destinies of mortals. Out of all Sumerian narratives, the tale of the Great Flood remains one of the most widely disseminated and compelling. rooted in texts such as the Epic of Ziusudra Atrahasis, and later the Gilgamesh epics. The story recounts the cataclysmic deluge unleashed by the gods to cleanse a corrupted humanity. Though details vary, the common motif centers on a single virtuous individual, often identified as Ziusudra Utnapishtim or Atrahasis, who receives clandestine counsel from a sympathetic deity, typically Enki Ea in Akkadian. Enki instructs this mortal on constructing a boat of specific dimensions and materials, ensuring the survival of family members and representative animals. The storm then rages, submerging the land, erasing cities, and annihilating nearly all life. Once the waters abate, the hero emerges, often making a sacrifice or offering to appease the gods. Moved by remorse or relief, the gods bless this survivor with knowledge or immortality, ensuring the re-establishment of human existence under renewed, divine-granted grace. This Sumerian flood cycle has resonated in multiple civilizations, persisting through Babylonian, Hebrew, Greek, and even older Vedic traditions. The biblical Noah story in Genesis is strikingly akin to the Sumerian version, suggesting cultural cross-pollination throughout the ancient Near East. The thematic underpinnings, human transgression, divine retribution, salvation of the righteous, and the forging of a new covenant, speak to universal moral and existential concerns. For the Sumerians living in a region prone to destructive floods, such a narrative likely served both as a cosmic warning about offending the gods and a reflection on the unstoppable power of natural disasters. In a single mythic sweep, it explained widespread ruin while affirming that even devastation could become a pivot for a new cosmic balance. Debate continues regarding whether the flood story retains any basis in an actual event. Some geologists hypothesize localized floods along the Euphrates or Tigris that might have had catastrophic local impacts, later mythologized in oral and written tradition. Others see it purely as symbolic, shaped by the Mesopotamian worldview that cosmic forces periodically reset civilization to purge moral corruption. Regardless of its historicity, the flood story exemplifies the Sumerian gift for allegory, imparting timeless lessons about humility, the precariousness of life, and humanity's complex relationship with the divine. Themes of obedience, gratitude, and renewal echo in multiple religious canons, attesting to the deep psychological chord these stories strike in audiences across eras. For historians, the existence of multiple versions or textual fragments of the flood epic reveals the fluidity of Sumer's literary tradition. Scribes in various city-states adapted the tale to local contexts or theological slants. Over successive centuries, Akkadian, Babylonian, and Assyrian authors wove it into their own epic cycles. The synergy of writing, religious thought, and cultural interchange effectively immortalized the flood myth. Thus, we encounter in these tablets not just a reflection of Sumerian spirituality, but a window into how narratives transform over time, traveling vast distances, bridging linguistic divides, and finding new life in unfamiliar cultural landscapes. In so doing, the Sumerian flood legend remains one of humanity's enduring mythic tapestries, bridging ancient perceptions of cosmic justice to modern dialogues about environmental stewardship, moral responsibility, and existential vulnerability. Within Sumerian epics, references occasionally surface to fabled locales that straddle the line between fact and myth. One such entity is Aratta, a city described in stories like Enmerkar and the Lord of Aratta as a magnificent rival to Uruk, brimful of gold, precious stones, and transcendent artisanship. Its splendor was said to eclipse that of established city-states, and even the formidable kings of Sumer recognized Arata's grand stature. Yet pinpointing its physical location remains an archaeological conundrum. Some scholars speculate that Arata might lie somewhere on the Iranian plateau or in the mountainous terrain of the Caucasus. Others propose more far-flung possibilities like the Indus Valley based on trade records and textual allusions to long-distance commerce. Since no unmistakable material evidence such as definitive inscriptions or city ruins has been discovered, some interpret Arata as purely symbolic, a mythical city that represents an ideal or otherworldly domain of wealth, creativity, and advanced spiritual insight. The quest to find Arata captures a broader fascination with the boundaries of ancient Sumerian influence. With trade routes extending in all directions, it is plausible that rumors of distant wealthy lands were passed along caravans, fueling a collective imagination about uncharted territories. Just as the Greeks would later envision Hyperborea or Atlantis, the Sumerians had their own wondrous realms that illuminated both aspirations and anxieties about the unknown. These tales of hidden cities and formidable rivals are in a sense expansions of the Sumerian worldview, demonstrating that they perceived themselves as part of a vast, interconnected continuum where real economic ties commingled with creative speculation. Moreover, the city of Arata storyline underscores how mythology could be employed politically. If a Sumerian king sought to glorify his own reign, or city stories of Arata's might could serve to highlight his success in negotiating or subduing it. Conversely, Arata's near-mythic prosperity provided a foil pushing Sumerians to refine their crafts and trade networks to compete with or emulate such splendors. Myths about rival cities are not unique to Sumer. They appear across ancient literature as reflections of cultural ambition and insecurity. They remind us that the ancient world was rife with emergent powers, and that one civilization's ascendancy rarely went unchallenged. In modern scholarship, the pursuit of Arata resonates with the abiding allure of lost civilizations. Researchers keep sifting through textual clues in the Sumerian corpus, scanning remote landscapes with satellite imagery and mounting occasional exploratory digs. While no definitive site for Arata has emerged, the search itself illuminates Sumer's extensive cultural footprint, affirming that from the dawn of organized society, humans have been enthralled by the dream of territories beyond known frontiers. Whether Arata proves to be a real place or remains an enduring figment of the Sumerian imaginative realm, it continues to symbolize the unending quest to delineate the known world's outer edges, bridging scholarship, legend, and an age-old human desire for wonder and discovery. Sustained achievements, mysteries, and the legacy of Sumer. Sumer's civilization thrived upon a multifaceted social structure, wherein class divisions were apparent yet surprisingly navigable. At the pinnacle stood the royalty and high priests revered as intermediaries between gods and mortals, able to orchestrate large projects and shape city politics. Underneath were the aristocratic landowners and merchant elites who managed estates, sponsored trades, and often held sway in local councils. Free citizens, farmers, artisans, and laborers formed the backbone of Sumerian productivity, cultivating fields and crafting essential goods. At the bottom tier were slaves, many of them war captives or debtors, who performed the hardest labor with minimal rights. Despite this stratification, the lines between classes could sometimes blur, as demonstrated by historical examples, like Queen Kubaba's rise from obscurity and the existence of some slaves who later earned or bought their freedom. In this interplay, Sumer appeared flexible enough to reward skill and initiative. Education was central to this dynamic. While formal instruction was primarily accessible to boys from wealthy families, scribal training via Eduba schools produced a specialized cadre of literate individuals who significantly influenced administrative and spiritual realms. These scribes were the civilization's memory keepers, drafting laws, logging trade deals, composing religious hymns, and preserving stories. The rigor of the scribal curriculum, which covered mathematics, geometry, grammar, and even moral lessons, underscored the high value placed upon intellectual expertise. Although restricted, this educational model elevated those who graduated, granting them mobility and status that could surpass other social distinctions. Some women, especially those joining the temple as priestesses, also accessed a portion of this knowledge, which allowed for roles in managerial or religious contexts. Culturally, Sumer was a mosaic of city-states, each with unique traditions, patron gods, and dialectical nuances. Still, they shared overarching narratives, script and religious ceremonies that fostered a collective identity transcending political divisions. Intercity competitions for prestigious titles or temple expansions often spurred new cultural expressions, more elaborate festivals, poems dedicated to beloved deities, and refined artistry in pottery or metalwork. One remarkable feature of Sumerian identity was its capacity to integrate external influences. From the materials gleaned through trade or war, they selectively absorbed foreign innovations, weaving them seamlessly into local frameworks. This synergy between internal tradition and external novelty prevented cultural stagnation, ensuring Sumer's evolution across centuries. The forging of new alliances or subjugation by external powers like the Akkadians periodically redefined Sumerian identity but seldom erased it. Such resilience suggests that Sumer's unity lay not in an unbroken political regime, but rather in a shared worldview of cosmic order, sustained by writing ritual and communal memory. The city-states might have clashed frequently, but they also recognized a collective heritage, the primal myths, the base 60 counting system, the revered scribal academies, and the abiding faith that the gods watched over every harvest. Through these threads, Sumer remained anchored in an ever-shifting environment, forging a civilization that, though physically confined to the lower Mesopotamian flood plains, achieved an intellectual and cultural expanse that bridged distant cultures and left an indelible imprint on subsequent ages. Among the many puzzling artistic legacies of Sumer, the handbag motif stands out for its pervasiveness and enigma. Depictions of deities or supernatural beings often feature a small bucket-like container with a curved handle meticulously carved on reliefs or cylinder seals. Intriguingly comparable motifs emerge in far-flung cultures, Egyptian temple walls, Mesoamerican stone carvings, and even ancient Anatolian art, suggesting a cross-cultural symbol whose precise meaning is still debated. Some hypothesize it was a literal container holding seeds, herbs, or holy water, indicating fertility and life-giving properties. Others interpret it allegorically, viewing the handbag as a portable repository of sacred knowledge or a cosmic key carried by the gods. Religious scholars propose that the repeated appearance of this motif implies a unifying sign shared among priests or elites who practiced the mysteries of each civilization. It might have been a signifier of divine authority, an emblem that only certain high-status figures could be shown wielding. The design's consistency, especially the handle's crescent shape and the container's rectangular base, appears too deliberate to be coincidental. Moreover, the motif frequently occurs in scenes that highlight a connection between the heavens and the earth, as if the bag's contents bridged mortal life and cosmic power. Such interpretations remain speculative, but continue to fuel debates, reflecting the Sumerians' aptitude for using art to convey layered messages and mythological depth. Also noteworthy is how this motif underlines the global nature of ancient symbolism. Contact between cultures facilitated by extensive trade may have spread artistic styles and religious motifs, leading to a shared pool of imagery. The Sumerians likely derived inspiration from or lent influence to neighboring regions. As artists traveling with caravans or sojourning in foreign courts encountered local iconography, they might integrate novel ideas into their own repertoires. The handbag motif is thus emblematic of a broader cultural exchange, suggesting that ancient art was not produced in isolation, but was shaped by a dynamic interplay of adaptation and reinterpretation. Yet the consistent retention of the motif's basic form and symbolism highlights how certain icons, whether representing the continuity of life, spiritual knowledge, or divine authority, could persist across vast distances and remain meaningful to diverse peoples. Archaeological excavations occasionally uncover new artifacts that add to the puzzle. Some examples show the handbags accompanied by rosettes, winged figures, or stylized trees, each offering new hints about the motif's potential role in ritual or cosmic narratives. Scholars remain divided, and perhaps no single explanation can capture the complexity. But in weaving modern theories with the original contexts, temple rituals, processions of gods, or scenes of cosmic creation, researchers inch closer to deciphering how the Sumerians themselves might have understood this symbol. Whether purely decorative or steeped in esoteric significance, the handbag motif stands as a testament to Sumer's skill in encoding religious and cultural concepts in visual art, leaving a legacy of speculation and fascination among modern scholars and enthusiasts of ancient history alike. Despite thriving for over 3 millennia, Sumer's civilization gradually succumbed to a confluence of environmental, political, and economic pressures. The land between the Tigris and Euphrates, once plush with fertile fields, began to show signs of fatigue due to improper irrigation and salinization. Overcultivation, without proper crop rotation, led to a drop in agricultural yields, undermining the surplus that had once fueled city growth and trade. Water management systems reliant on constant maintenance began to fail amid intercity conflicts and weakened governance, leaving communities vulnerable to floods or drought. This environmental degradation dovetailed with intensifying rivalries among the city-states, draining resources in perpetual wars over farmland trade routes and spiritual dominance. The synergy of these stressors eroded Sumer's cohesion, making it increasingly susceptible to external powers. Meanwhile, new powers emerged. The Akkadians under Sargon forged the first known empire in Mesopotamia, eclipsing Sumer's old city-state model. Subsequent dynasties, notably the Babylonians and Assyrians, built upon Sumerian achievements in writing, law, and religion, but often supplanted Sumerian authority. By the second millennium BCE, the once prominent Sumerian language gradually gave way to Akkadian as the lingua franca, restricting Sumerian usage largely to sacred or ceremonial contexts. Over centuries, waves of migration and conquest further diluted the distinct Sumerian identity. City-states like Uruk and Lagash, which had reigned supreme in earlier epochs, either fell to ruin or were absorbed into larger empires. Yet the spirit of Sumer never truly vanished. Elements of its religious pantheon, architectural methods, cuneiform writing, mathematical systems, and legal principles reverberated across time and space. Babylonian scribes continued to copy and adapt Sumerian literature, most famously the Epic of Gilgamesh, while referencing Sumer's mythic traditions and cosmic perspectives. The region's evolving powers considered Sumerian civilization foundational, likening their own feats to those of fabled Sumerian kings. Indeed, future conquerors recognized that building upon Sumer's established infrastructure networks of canals, temples, and record-keeping structures conferred legitimacy and practicality. Thus, even as Sumerian polities ceased to exist as independent entities, their cultural imprint shaped Mesopotamia's and, by extension, the ancient world's trajectory. Modern rediscovery of Sumer began in earnest in the 19th century, when Western explorers and archaeologists, intrigued by biblical references to Babylon and Nineveh, stumbled upon older layers of ruins. Over decades of excavations culminating in momentous findings like Leonard Woolley's work at the clarity and brilliance of Sumerian civilization emerged. Translations of cuneiform texts revealed the oldest known language documents of daily trade, legal codes, and narratives that mirrored or preceded biblical traditions. Such revelations forced historians to reinterpret the cradle of civilization as not solely Egypt's domain, but a shared epoch of early development in Mesopotamia that shaped humanity's subsequent progress. Through these revelations, Sumerians took their place as pioneers of urban life, writing scientific observation and religious thought. Hence, rather than disappearing, Sumer merged into the cultural tapestry of its conquerors, bequeathing an indestructible intellectual and spiritual framework. Even as the Sumerian tongue faded into scholarly memory, the underlying ideas and systems became cornerstones of later Mesopotamian societies. From timekeeping conventions to epic storytelling tropes, from legal codes to theological motifs, the essence of Sumer's achievements informed subsequent eras, bridging ancient times with our modern world. Amid the grandeur of ziggurats and epic tales of creation, it is easy to overlook one of the most ubiquitous staples of Sumerian life: beer. In Sumer, beer transcended mere refreshment. Brewed primarily from barley, it was so thick and laden with nutrients that Sumerians often used drinking straws to bypass floating grits. Beer appears prominently in cuneiform records. Temple allotments for laborers included daily rations of it, and feasts or religious ceremonies regularly incorporated communal toasts. The beverage served a dual purpose. It was both a staple of nutrition, especially when fresh water supplies were questionable, and a potent social elixir fostering camaraderie. Artistic depictions on seals and reliefs attest to the cultural importance of communal beer drinking. Individuals, sometimes entire families, gathered around large jars, each person sipping through a reed straw. Songs extolling the brewing process or praising the goddess Ninkasi underscore the special reverence for beer, linking it to divine blessings and the prosperity of the harvest. Indeed, the Sumerians revered Ninkasi as the deity who perfected brewing, granting humanity not just a pleasurable drink, but an integral form of sustenance. Beyond simple indulgence, beer became currency, at times measured in standardized vessels and factored into workers' wages, anchoring it firmly into Sumer's economic practices. Alongside beer, public feasting offered glimpses into Sumer's communal spirit. Large gatherings in temple courtyards or city squares accompanied significant religious festivals, like the Akitu, the New Year celebration. People donated portions of their produce or livestock to the temple, culminating in lavish banquets. Musicians, dancing troupes, and storytellers entertained the crowd, blurring the lines between sacred ceremony and social festivity. The scale of these events helped reaffirm solidarity, bridging social classes through shared revelry, even if each group experienced it from different vantage points. Elite families might feast with temple priests, consuming choice cuts of meat and more refined beverages, while common folk partook of simpler fare, yet all collectively participated in upholding city traditions. Notably, the synergy of beer feasting and religious practice reinforced Sumer's social fabric. These events were not solely about consumption. They symbolized the cyclical renewal of life grain from the earth, fermented into a beverage that nourished the populace, forging unity. The sense of shared identity built on these occasions was critical in a region often beset by strife or natural adversity. By offering opportunities for merriment, introspection, and veneration of the gods, communal gatherings fortified cultural continuity. They also echoed the Sumerian conviction that the divine realm was inherently intertwined with everyday pleasures and labors. Historians studying these traditions glean insights into how an ostensibly simple commodity like beer served as a cultural cornerstone, bridging mundane routines with spiritual obligations and reminding modern audiences that behind every grand temple or epic ordinary joys and communal bonds were vital engines driving the civilization forward. Sumerian mythology abounds with vivid depictions of divine weaponry that, through a modern lens, verge on science fiction. Texts like the epic Lugal reference the god Ninurta, wielding a mace called Shar-ur, portrayed as a sentient instrument capable of transforming and conveying messages. In one legendary exploit, Ninurta defeats a monstrous serpent, emblematic of chaos, reaffirming cosmic order. Equally evocative are portrayals of the sun god Utu cutting through mountains at dawn, or Inanna sporting an array of armaments. These mythical armories symbolizing divine might underscore the Sumerians' fascination with advanced power, both in forging weaponry and harnessing supernatural forces. Scholars suspect that real technological leaps like the shift from stone to bronze weaponry ignited or amplified these stories. The newfound ability to forge stronger, more effective weapons might have seemed quasi-miraculous to those witnessing it. Yet the divine armaments are more than mere allegories for metalworking achievements. They encapsulate the Sumerian worldview in which gods actively shaped human destiny and natural phenomena. Lightning storms or meteor sightings might be rationalized as displays of divine war. Over time, direct experiences with phenomena like meteors blazing through the sky could spawn legends of flaming swords or godlike spears. Through the creative lens of myth, the incomprehensible mysteries of the cosmos were domesticated, mapped onto the pantheon, and woven into a narrative that validated social hierarchies and religious rites. In effect, these legends functioned as preludes to a form of proto-science, pushing observers to interpret natural wonders as orchestrated by higher powers. Modern enthusiasts sometimes read these accounts as evidence of ancient aliens or advanced prehistoric technology. While mainstream academia does not uphold such claims, the debate highlights how the potency of Sumerian myth endures in contemporary imaginations. The seamless intermingling of tangible technology, bronze forging sophisticated irrigation and city planning, with the otherworldly underscores a distinctive approach to knowledge. Sumer did not segregate the realm of the gods from the pursuit of practical advancement. Rather, both realms coexisted, inspiring each other. Technological improvements were revered, and large leaps might be credited to divine revelation or cosmic partnership. This synergy perhaps propelled the Sumerians to persistently expand their crafts, searching not just for sturdier metals, but also for reassurance that they were fulfilling divine mandates. As part of the broader theological tapestry, myths of divine weapons express an innate desire for control over a perilous world. In forging symbolic arms that pierced monstrous serpents or parted mountains, the Sumerians externalized their will to subdue chaos, be it natural calamities or societal upheaval. These narratives remain a testament to how an ancient people grappled with existential vulnerabilities, melding real progress in metallurgy with spiritual yearning for cosmic guardianship. Thus, even in intangible mythology, we glimpse the seeds of a rational inquiry that would later flourish in the crafts and sciences, hallmarking Sumer's role as an early forging ground for both intangible beliefs and very tangible innovations. Long after the city-states crumbled, Sumer's influence remained profound and far-reaching. The Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, who rose in the same fertile lands, systematically integrated Sumerian achievements. They adopted cuneiform, though adapted it to Semitic languages, and built upon Sumerian jurisprudence to craft their own celebrated legal codes, the best-known example being Hammurabi's Code. Sumer's theological scaffolding merged with Semitic deities, forming composite pantheons that evolved over centuries. Even iconic biblical narratives, from the flood story to the notion of paradise gardens, have parallels in Sumerian texts. Such cross-pollination points to a continuous cultural lineage that formed the bedrock of Western and Near Eastern civilizations. In contemporary scholarship, the Sumerian heritage challenges assumptions that advanced societies require large-scale centralized empires or lavish architectural wonders like pyramids. The Sumerians showcased how a network of smaller, independent city-states could collectively pioneer monumental developments in agriculture, law, spirituality, literature, and governance. Their legacy also questions the concept of progress, as linear historical cycles in Mesopotamia saw repeated expansions, collapses, and resurgences, with each phase building on and transforming what came before. Their method of record-keeping stands out, especially the cuneiform system's capacity to detail everything from mundane receipts to cosmic myths exemplifies how writing itself can unify the practical and the sacred in one integrated worldview. Sumer also gifts modern thinkers with a narrative that adversity can fuel creativity. The same floods that threatened livelihood spurred technological breakthroughs in irrigation and flood control. The fierce rivalries among city-states prompted leaps in military organization as well as in legal codes to temper conflict. The harsh climate demanded architectural resilience, leading to innovative construction methods. Caught between a precarious environment and the complexities of human ambition, the Sumerians responded with invention synergy of religion and governance, and an enduring written record that connected each generation to the next. Today's enthusiasts of antiquity, whether professional archaeologists or casual history buffs, continue delving into Sumer's past to glean new insights about communal organization, how knowledge spreads, and how mythic frameworks can unify societies. Ongoing excavations often reveal more about daily life kitchen tools, children's toys, amulets to ward off sickness, offering personal glimpses that complement the grand narratives of ziggurats and epic myths. These intimate artifacts remind us that Sumer was not solely about kings and gods. It was a tapestry woven from everyday experiences, from farmers tending canal-fed fields to scribes in dimly lit rooms, shaping wet clay tablets. This humanity resonates across the ages, bridging a gulf of thousands of years and underscoring that the people of Sumer wrestled with aspirations, fears, and communal commitments comparable to our own. In unearthing the story of Sumer, we uncover not just an ancient civilization, but an underlying pattern in humanity's trajectory, where persistent questions about survival, faith power, and identity converge. The Sumerians harnessed the wild Mesopotamian terrain to forge canal networks, farm bountiful crops, and sustain bustling city-states. They invented cuneiform, giving posterity an invaluable resource for understanding humanity's earliest administrative, literary, and scientific impulses. Their pantheon and myths offer us direct windows into a worldview that saw life as a delicate balance of cosmic forces, with humans striving for alignment or risking divine calamity. Even the finer details, like the significance of a cup of beer or the wonder of a skillfully forged tool, carry profound lessons on how everyday habits and breakthroughs shape a civilization's destiny. While the Sumerians eventually bowed to the unstoppable currents of ecological deterioration, external conquest, and cultural assimilation, their spirit endures in the bedrock of subsequent Mesopotamian empires and in the broader tapestry of world civilizations. Every time we consult a clock's minute hand measure angles in degrees or glimpse legal codification that preserves social equity, we pay indirect homage to Sumer's foundational structures. Their elaborate myths etched on clay have whispered through the centuries, inspiring theological discourses and epic narratives in numerous cultures. Their bold expansions in metallurgical techniques and architecture laid stepping stones for engineers and builders across time. In many ways, the Sumerians were the vanguard of urban life, forging administrative practices and cultural mores that would enable humanity to flourish in structured communities rather than scattered hunter-gatherer bands. By reflecting on Sumer's Odyssey, we see both the glory and fragility inherent in all civilizations. It highlights how environmental stewardship, legal clarity, and cultural unity are constantly negotiated by societies. If Sumer's abrupt transformations and eventual decline teach us anything, it is that innovations must be balanced with sustainable practices, and that unity among diverse communities can be as fleeting as it is essential. The echoes of Sumer's grand ziggurats, fervent rites, and wise scribes remind us that even the grandest achievements can be diminished by shifting climates or socio-political divisions. Yet they also confirm that human creativity, when combined with devotion, whether to God's ancestors or communal ideals, can leave an indelible legacy. In the end, Sumer's saga is a testament to the human quest for meaning, stability, and progress. It stands as a potent reminder of what can be accomplished through collective effort and visionary thinking, as well as a cautionary tale of how success can be jeopardized by neglecting environmental and societal equilibrium. Thousands of years after Sumer's city-states vanished, their story still challenges and inspires us, calling on each new generation to reimagine how knowledge, belief, and communal enterprise can shape the destiny of civilization.